British talk show royalty Graham Norton has reigned for more than 20 years. Someone whose humor could save even the worst live TV moments and whose wit could ease tension. Awkward situations have been gracefully navigated by the many celebrities who have graced his crimson sofa, including movie stars and music legends. Quiets disappear as if by magic. Although Norton is known for his calm demeanor, not every guest has been pleasant. There were occasions that left marks that could never be healed. Graham Norton, at the age of 62, has come clean about the things that went down behind the surface of his comedic persona, put his expertise, sense of humor, and patience to the test. He speaks the truth without harboring resentment or animosity. Reason being, even behind the most popular talk show in the world, there were nights he wished would just end. On those nights when charisma failed to save the discussion, along with the individuals listed there, they comprise a number of the most influential and erratic stars in Hollywood. The night chaos Mark Wahlberg sat down. The 2013 season of Graham Norton's show was the most successful to date. A worldwide sensation that millions of people tune into each weekend. Norton was sure to claim yet another resounding triumph that evening. The invitation list was ideal. Professionalism and wry humor are hallmarks of Michael F. Bender's persona. Sarah Silverman, who never hesitates to test the limits and think outside the box. And let's not forget Hollywood superstar Mark Wahlberg, who is known for his flamboyant antics, infectious laughter, and imposing presence. But Wahlberg's plan to make the whole broadcast a demonstration of live television mayhem was something nobody, not even Graham Norton, had anticipated. There was an immediate change in energy as soon as Wahlberg stepped onto the stage. His cockiness was more visible. His jokes were a little too aggressive, and his speech was a little slurred. For a while, it was entertaining. Assuming he was only in a good mood, the onlookers chuckled. However, as time went on, the vibe changed from exciting to unnerving. Wahlberg was more than just chill. He was stoned. Time was not on his side. His gags backfired, and he started cutting people off, even Norton. Every time Fassbender attempted to talk, Wahlberg would interject with an arbitrary remark. He leaned over Sarah Silverman and shouted over her jokes whenever she presented a story. What started off as a game quickly became uncomfortable. The stress was palpable. Members of the audience were unsure whether to laugh or turn away, according to one eyewitness. Then the unforgettable moment arrived. Wahlberg snapped out of his stupor, got to his feet, and gingerly made his way to the right, perch on Graham Norton's hip. As though they were long-lost bar friends, he leaned in close to the host, mumbled something incoherent, and chuckled. An anxious chuckle broke out among the audience. Norton, who deserves praise for his poise and professionalism, with a smile on my face, and delicately attempting to redirect the subject. His eyes, however, revealed the stress. The show caused a social media frenzy once it aired. Some viewers even went so far as to say it was the most chaotic moment in talk show history. For some, it was pure comedy gold. Others claimed it was a challenge to observe. Even Norton acknowledged afterwards that he was fatigued from the night. He had simply lost touch with reality. Wahlberg made light of the situation afterwards, saying he'd only been drinking before continuing. That evening, however, was not joking. It proved that not even the most amiable host could prevent every storm. Even when everything is coming apart around you, the show must go on. The interview with Robert Dyro that never materialized. Given that Mark Wahlberg embodied anarchy, Robert Day router stillness. The world anticipated a unique window into the mind of a great. when the Oscar-winning actor made an appearance on Graham Norton's show. Instead, Norton administered one of the most challenging interviews he had ever done. The fact that Dyro was quiet and restrained was already known, but nobody anticipated that it would be that intense. He appeared awkward, cordial, and emotionally aloof the second he took a seat. His responses, which were usually just a few words long, were measured, careful, and slow. Norton scoured the entire realm, lightheartedness, mild taunting, and flattery included. The experiment was a failure. After receiving yet another terse reply, Norton finally cracked the code, grinned, and said what everyone was thinking. "Robert, this is a lot of labor." A frightened laugh escaped the audience. All Dyro did was flash a small smile. Throughout the remainder of the episode, Norton spoke solo while attempting to maintain a light-hearted tone. However, he did confess afterwards that it was draining, despite his composed demeanor. Unlike eloquent but inebriatuists, Dyro's demeanor was easygoing. Simply put, he was a pain. He meant no disrespect. Being in such a carefree, humorous setting made him feel uneasy. In stark contrast to Dyro's calm demeanor, Norton's subdued composure transformed the interview into a chess battle. The one taking the offensive uses humor while the other stays silent. Still, it was an experience I will never forget. What viewers witnessed was a collision of universes, not a conflict of egos. The discussion radio host who flourished through interpersonal connections, and the actor whose reputation was built on a sense of intrigue. Later, Norton said, "Some guests just don't like to talk, and that's fine, but when it's live television, you have to make silence look entertaining." Patience was the lesson learned from the Dyro episode, and it proved that not every celebrity can be enchanted, and not every mythology loves to be revealed. Until the scandal, Harvey Weinstein was a shadow. Harvey Weinstein made an appearance on Graham Norton's show long before his name was associated with shame. Something about the vibe seemed off even at that early stage. The entire facts regarding the shamed producer would not be revealed to the world for a long time. Still, Graham Norton will never forget what happened that night. Weinstein was not a guest. He was an imposing presence, loud, domineering, and completely self-assured. He was the ruler of the couch from the very beginning. He broke off Norton in the middle of his statement, interrupted other guests, and turned almost every question around to benefit himself. The show's trademark warmth vanished as the air was thick with Weinstein's haughtiness. More and more, Norton attempted to direct through Weinstein became increasingly defensive and boastful as the talk veered away from humor and light-hearted stories, praising his achievements and influencing in Hollywood. Norton seemed uneasy for the first time. He is ordinarily unflappable. As the interview continued, his pleasant grin faded, and everyone in the crowd could see something was wrong. The ease of laughter diminished, giving way to anxious giggles as the strain increased. Even though it wasn't a scandal or breakdown on live television, it was still terrible. The show's inherent flow became something completely different due to the slow, oppressive control. Norton recounted that interview with a haunting feeling of retrospect. Years after Weinstein's downfall and the deluge of accusations that terminated his career. "I was completely unaware when it happened," he whispered. In hindsight, though, it's all clear. His explanation was vague, quite a bit. But the point was very apparent. What had been an uncomfortable incident now evoked a more sinister image, a sneak peek at the haughtiness and brutality that the world would later witness for what it was. Even though the footage is still available online, very few people watch it now. Viewers may feel uneasy about it, Asterisk it serves as a reminder to Graham Norton that evil can lurk in plain sight at times. It attempts to take over the room the second it steps foot on your stage, all while grinning for the cameras. Mickey Roar, the stillness of darkness fell upon the world. Mickey Roar was the antithesis of the domineering Harvey Weinstein. Keeping mum, emotional distance, almost ethereal. The actor's appearance on Graham Norton's show was anticipated by fans as a blend of unconventional charm and Hollywood appeal. Actually, they ended up with one of the most awkward and subdued interviews that the show has ever had. As soon as he took a seat, he clearly did not want to be on the red sofa. When he did speak, it was with a hunched back, distant eyes, and brief, cryptic, or incoherent answers. Graham Norton, who is renowned for his talent at getting even the most reserved guests to open up, offered him every possible support. He inquired about movies, boxing, or anything else that could pique interest. The experiment was a failure. After Roar's legendary comeback as a wrestler, Norton made a light-hearted joke about it. No one in the crowd, including Roar, cracked a joke. With a simple nod, he averted his gaze. What followed was an intolerable period of quiet. Every passing second felt heavier than the last, despite Norton's best efforts to fill the space with words and a grin. One producer reflected afterwards that it seemed like chatting with a brick wall. It was hopeless even for Graham. Upon the conclusion of the program airing, viewers could see that Norton was exhausted by the finale. He went on to say the interview was the most challenging of his career. He merely preferred not to be present. You can't fake energy, Norton stated. Just do your best to stay alive in this dead of night. If night was made more unpleasant by a lack of respect and animosity, the lack of connection was the main problem. Neither was Roar nasty or harsh. Just buried in his own thoughts, he was somewhere else, out of the show's reach. That fateful night demonstrated that disputes or mayhem. Emptiness is the source of some. Nothing kills a host whose strength is conversation more than when their guest is completely flat. My name is Kevin Costner. When charm become inert, Kevin Costner's appearance on Graham Norton's show was completely incidental. No inebriated stumbling, no heated arguments, no abrupt exits. Graham Norton, on the other hand, had one of the most tedious 30 minutes of his career. Ego and attitude weren't the issues, it was the key. The Hollywood legend Costner, who is famous for his gravity and cool demeanor on screen, entered the room as if he were entering a press conference rather than a celebration. Norton's talk show is at its best when there's anarchy, humor, overlapping narratives, and apparently unscripted moments. In contrast, Costner responded asking each question with the same level-headed clarity that he exhibited in Dances with Wolves. The cozy atmosphere that is typically associated with Norton's couch never appeared. In an effort to get him to join in on the laughter, the presenter did everything from making humorous remarks about his illustrious roles to making teasing jokes about his bodyguard. With an occasional, kind smile, Costner stayed on track. Some people just don't get what this show is, Norton once stated, mentioning that night. It's intended to be humorous. This isn't a trip for the media. Held down. The dissimilarity impulse was sharp. Costner hesitated before responding to Norton's joke. Like a man engrossed in a documentary, he listened in silence as others shared humorous stories. People in the crowd could sense the disconnection. Sure, there was mutual regard, but there was zero spark. Costner wasn't unpleasant. He was simply very serious. His level head and professionalism stood in stark contrast to the mayhem of the show. Even Norton appeared relieved to be moving on at the conclusion. It's not that he was unpleasant, he subsequently confessed. He was merely in another place. Unlike most of her guests, Costner's interview stood out because of how calm and collected she was. There was no explosion. Uncomfortably still, it was silent and subdued. For that even legendary people may have sleepless nights and that the most challenging interviews aren't always the most outrageous ones was a sobering reminder to Norton. Those people never really liven up. It was the interview with Daryl Hannah that finally wore him down. None of Graham Norton's interviews have ever irritated him more than this one. Relative to Daryl Hannah's, she flat out refused to play along. And it had nothing to do with her being disrespectful or haughty. This evening ought to have been a breeze. Hannah, who starred in Bladoiner and Splash, was in attendance to promote a movie. Norton, who is consistently kind, welcomed her with open arms and guided her with gentle, kind inquiries. It was obvious that something was up with her initial response. Her responses consisted of single words. She remained silent, offering no response whatsoever. A hush fell, cramped tight. All of Norton's strategies were exhausted. A touch of humor, understanding, and even modesty for oneself. The experiment was a failure. She didn't appear irate, but rather emotionally distant, as if she preferred to be someplace else. All of the other visitors appeared uncomfortable. As time went on, the crowd fidgeted. What a nightmare for the host who made his name by ensuring his visitors were comfortable. It was infuriating, Norton said afterwards. I was concerned that I was sapping thetiscourse while dangling from a precipice. Norton looked exhausted by the segment's conclusion. In order to keep the momentum going, viewers saw how he deftly moved the spotlight away from her and onto other guests. Later on, he admitted that it was the one occasion he really became impatient. Internally rather than outside. He made the point that you see how delicate everything is when someone gives you nothing in return. If no one is interested in attending, the show will fail, despite the clip's rarity on modern television. Its devoted viewers still recollect the tense atmosphere, the uncomfortable laughs, the courteous smiles, and the profound quiet. It proved that when one party stops responding, not even the best host can salvage the situation. That night taught Graham Norton the value of humility. He possessed an allure that saved him from utter disarray, haughtiness, and scandal, but not from apathy. That, above everything else, was what he found intolerable. Graham Norton has been through it all in his more than 20 years of hosting the show, shifting from raucous behavior to stony stillness. But not even on his darkest hours came close to obscure his accomplishments. Connectivity, warmth, and humor are the hallmarks of this show. Those pesky guests weren't a bust. It served as a timely reminder that, just as in real life, television can be difficult to manage. Every uncomfortable pause and compilation further demonstrated the rarity of genuine chemistry. Where the magic happens is when it's working, when people laugh, connect, and share actual experiences. Now, what are your thoughts on the matter? In retrospect, which interview stands out the most to you? Mark Wahlberg's mayhem and his relative quieto Dyro, or Daryl Hannah's stress? Please inform me in the space provided.